Our format today is a little bit different for SheBoss, which I am very excited about. We are joined today with Amanda Gunville, who has a lot of exciting things to share. It also happens to be her birthday. So happy birthday to you.
Thank
Very
you.
excited about.
Lucky 21.
That's right. That's right. And you're finally legal. So Amanda and I have had the absolute honor of getting a chance to get to know each other over the past couple of weeks. And the timing of us getting connected could not be more perfect. We're going to get to her story in just a second, but she has a wonderful and hilarious book out that actually comes out today, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. But she's also got an amazing story just of her career and her background and the different things that she's done. But if you have noticed, we have shifted, not the one behind me, but through all platforms, we have changed our logo to be pink for this month, for the month of October, in recognition and awareness for breast cancer awareness. And anybody who follows, Flourish on our platform knows that we are big proponents of being advocates for your own health. We've got a whole series called Empowering Wellness, where we've shared different journeys of different individuals. Mine in particular, I found out I had a gene mutation, which prompted me to get a prophylactic double mastectomy at the end of 2023. Best decision I ever made, because I'm not walking around worried that I may wake up one day finding myself in the position that Amanda once did. And so courageous and so brave to tell her story. But this is all about bringing awareness to just empowering ourselves with greater information, being our own advocates, and really making sure that we are taking care of our health. So ladies, play with your boobs this month in October. Just kidding, but just be proactive, right? And we're going to learn about different tools and mechanisms that can help you if you happen to find yourself in that position, and hopefully add a little bit of humor and light to an otherwise devastating situation. But this month, we're being very intentional about what we're talking about, and we're kicking the month off with Amanda. So we are thrilled. So thank you so much for joining us for SheBoss.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Megan. It's an absolute honor.
You bet. You bet. So I know a little bit about you, but your background is amazing. And we're going to get to the bigger thing, which is your book, which comes out today. We're going to talk about that in a second. But let's just kind of start with a little bit of your background. I know you're originally from Montana. You live in Denver now. So talk to us just a little bit about sort of how you grew up and some of that career journey, and we'll just sort of go from there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Yes, I grew up in the beautiful state of Montana and found myself at college across the country and knew that I had a passion for two things: sports and business. And so, as we were talking earlier, I'll start from the beginning and go on through. So I went to college and I had this passion of being in sports, but as you can imagine, coming from Montana, I had no connections. And I was at a basketball game, and I looked down at the court and I saw all of these men, filming the game. I was at the University of Arizona. Our basketball team was very good, so we were always on national broadcasts. And I saw the guy behind the camera just holding the cables. And I said, well, I could do that job. I could be the cable holder. So after the game, I went to the outside and I found the truck and I said, hey, who hires here? And the guy came out and said, well, what are you looking for? And I said, I'll hold cables. I'll do anything. And so that led for me to become a production assistant. And I just worked my tail off. And by the end of the year, they offered me to be a stage manager. And my first job ever as a stage manager was for a football game. And I was supposed to be on the sidelines with the sideline reporters. That's sort of your entree into stage management. I show up to set an hour early because I didn't want to be late. And I'm sitting there, and the person who's supposed to be up in the booth with the famous guys is late, like 30 minutes late. And she shows up and he says, no one shows up to my set late. You're on the field. And he points to me, first time ever being on set. And he says, you're in the booth. So I go up there, and the color commentator is legendary quarterback Warren Moon. And Warren, for those who don't know, longtime storied NFL quarterback. And at the end of the game, he was kind enough to say, here's my card. If there's anything I can ever do, let me know. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what he did. I just knew he played football once upon a time. I look at it and I realize it's the card for the most famous sports agent at that time, probably arguably in the world. He was the inspiration for Jerry Maguire, if you ever saw that movie. And so I followed up and ultimately became an intern, worked my tail off there, and ultimately they offered me a job, and that's what got me into the world of sports. So that was phase one of my career.
What
um,
was that
yeah.
like being a woman? I mean, I don't want to ask, I don't want this to come out cliche, but working in sports management and being in that space is, I would imagine, is definitely a male dominated field. So what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I later ended up starting my own agency like 10 years later, and we represented probably 50 different athletes within NFL and Olympic sports. And what I found myself doing was trying to sort of man up with the guys. So if they said something crass, I would say something more crass. If they were harsh, I was trying to be a man, right?
Mhm.
And that was self-inflicted. And what I learned, Megan, was that you don't need to do that to be successful as a woman. I felt like I needed to be more serious, more, tough. And I had a wonderful advisor once tell me, friend advisor, who said, you're a lot more powerful if you embrace your feminine energy. And I thought,
Wow.
really,
Was
really?
was
And
that someone who you worked like side by side with and could see you doing that?
mm,
That's someone who you
really,
spoke to and shared that you did that with?
that's a really, really good question. So, no, he did not work side by side with me. He was a friend who had coached thousands of people in executive roles. And
Mhm.
this was, I'd since then moved on into the world of private equity and, found myself being really serious. At that time, was pre-cancer. I had long blonde hair, and I was very nervous and thinking that people wouldn't take me seriously as a woman in an extremely male dominated industry, and being blonde, blue eyed, I looked young. And so I was trying to be somebody that I authentically was not.
Mhm.
And yeah, so it was just me confiding in him. And he said, when we embrace our true authentic self, which for me was this tender, loving person with a soft heart, a really soft heart, but I was showing up as hard.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how much more powerful as a woman executive you can be when you embrace that divine feminine of leading with the heart and saying, rather than saying things, this is how it's going to be, we
Yeah.
say, in my heart, I feel, this, I feel drawn to this. I feel this is the right way to treat people. I want kindness to show. Even
Mhm.
with men, I'm not talking about talking to women, I'm talking about talking to men, how all of a sudden it also softens them.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden it becomes the most dynamic work environment because we are both speaking with our beautiful, authentic, soft self. And then the message or the mission or whatever it is you're trying to do becomes amplified.
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting that you say that. I think that naturally, a lot of women who work in male dominated fields naturally feel like they have to be a different version of themselves out of, and you've heard it. I'm sure you've heard this many times, right? Where it's, if you try to be too firm about something, then you're a bitch. Or if you're too
Right.
soft on things, then and so it's like, it's this balance of trying to figure out really how to be your true authentic self yet still adapt to the culture that's been set. I'm sure you've been in cultures where that was much more received in maybe a positive way, where others maybe not so much, and you've got to kind of
Mhm.
do that balance a little bit, which can certainly be challenging. But yeah, so
Yeah,
well,
it
so
is.
So with your sports management career, like what sort of that being kind of phase one, like what brought you into the wine business and like getting over into, which is so exciting to hear. And I know a lot of our audience are big winos. You know, actually a wine glass used to be part of our SheBoss logo because it was always done over a glass of wine. But as we've
I
grown,
love it.
not necessarily the case. So talk to us a little bit about how you kind of made that transition from one industry to the next and what sort of prompted that for you.
Yeah. So I decided in the sports business world that I really did love the world of finance. So I decided to go back and get my MBA in finance and focus primarily in venture capital. So I ended up I went to the University of Notre Dame, and they had a venture capital kind of course that you could take, track we'll call it, because it wasn't just one course, and then also a competition. So I then I found a private equity firm that was my dream job to be a part of, and I researched the heck out of it. He happened to be an alum of Notre Dame, and when I found out he was going to be at one of the football games, I tracked him down and asked him very strategic questions about not about his companies, but basically setting myself up for hopefully an interview. Anyway, long story short, I got an interview, got the job, and it launched my private equity career. And that was right in 2008, 2009. So, as you can imagine, our world collapsed and the debt market collapsed. And so, while I was the newest man on the job, we knew that private equity deals are structured where you need to attach equity plus debt. When the debt market collapsed, we knew we weren't going to be doing any deals. I was on the due diligence / deal sourcing team. And so I was let go. But I was very fortunate that I had been doing so much work for the portfolio companies in marketing, government affairs, all across the board. When the owners of those companies found out that I was no longer with the private equity firm, they reached out to me and said, "Will you come in house?" And I said, "Well, we had some oil and gas companies in Wyoming." I said, "Well, I don't really want to move to Wyoming, but I would love to work with you." So it launched my consulting career. And I started that and have been doing consulting for 20 plus years now. Within that, I also launched, I think, 4 or 5 different businesses throughout the last 20 years. And one of them, when COVID hit, I had joined a group of women who decided that we wanted to help other female entrepreneurs, because I know you know this, Megan, but only 2 to 3% of investment capital goes to female entrepreneurs. And we wanted to change that, because even though that's such a small percentage, if there is a female at the leadership point of the company, an owner, a CEO, whatever, they have 20% higher ROI, higher return on investment. So it's like, it's the smart decision. So we really wanted to promote female entrepreneurs and try to support them. And that's when we met the wine company. The founder of the wine company, she came into one of our pitch days, and she was, I think, 8.5 months pregnant. It was a snowy day, and she was pregnant out to here. And she came in and just rocked it. And we said,
Of course she did.
right? She was amazing. And I fell in love with it. I had years earlier gotten my level 2 sommelier certification just because I love wine. That's right when COVID hit. And we said, how can we give back to these companies who probably are not going to be able to raise capital, because the world was so uncertain at that time. And so we decided that we would help any of the companies that we could. And I said, well, I'm a level 2 som. I used to own a beverage company in one of my other ventures. I know a little bit about the industry. So I just volunteered to help her. And within a couple weeks, I fell in love with working with her. So I decided to invest my own money into the company, and she asked me to come on board as the CMO and COO of the company. So that's how that transpired.
That is awesome. That is awesome. So just quick peek into your role and really what that looked like. Did you guys do retail sales through local stores where you were? Was it online? Like what was the business model that you had?
Yeah, great question. So it was about 50-50. So we had a presence in major retail. Trying to think of which major retail partners we had at the time. Now it's Whole Foods, Sprouts, Kroger, King Super, big conglomerates now. And then we launched the influencer campaign, which was perfect timing for COVID because everybody was at home and everybody was looking for that one great glass of wine. The niche of the company was that it was premium and organic single serve wine glasses. So rather than opening a whole bottle and wasting, if you don't drink it all, because you don't necessarily want a hangover the next day, but you want a premium glass because at that time, the only small servings of wine were really the bulk, not so great for you wines. So it was this really cool niche. And we utilized influencers to get our message out, which proved to be an extremely well-timed investment in marketing.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. I mean, the world of influencer marketing it is just insane to see how things have come just in the last 8 years, 8 to 10 years, but
Mhm.
it has just been insane. That's really exciting though, that you leverage that. So out of curiosity, what was like looking back and having kind of that marketing, background and operational background, what do you think really did it for you guys with the influencer campaign? Was it that nobody else was doing what you did, or did you, team up with personalities that were just super unique and brought some creative style to it? Or I'm curious about that.
Well, you could write the book, Megan, because we did all those things.
So fun.
So we picked out women that we felt resonated with our target audience. So it typically was women in their mid 30s to kind of late 40s who were a lot of times mothers or just, young female executives. And we were strategic in those partnerships. And then it just happened to be great timing where no one else was offering what we offered, in that single serve packaging and could be delivered straight to your door instead of having to go out
Yeah.
to the store, which was a nervous thing to have to do at that time. Remember, we were
Right.
washing our groceries when we walked in the door. Yes, getting the Clorox wipes and washing everything. So this was delivered straight to people. So I think it was perfect timing. A lot of times you hear entrepreneurs say, was it luck or was it, true talent? And I think it was both,
Yeah.
certainly, because the timing was great. And at that time, influencers were not that expensive.
Yeah.
Now, the same influencers, I just had a conversation last week, those same influencers that we got to just, it was like commission based. Now
Yeah.
they're 50, 60, $70,000 just to do one post. It's insane.
Oh my God. I just can't even
Yeah,
like, wrap my head around that. I'm like, okay. But
I know.
it's awesome. And I honestly, I truly do I admire certain influencers when they use their platform for the right reason. And, they're able to promote a message that is just very unique. And it's the way that our world is communicating now, and not solely, but it's a huge part of how we consume information and how we learn about new products and learn about new services and all of that. So yeah, anyways, but that's fascinating. Maybe it was, the partnership they had with you all that really got them to that place. You know what I mean? Of
I'll take
success.
that.
Of course it was. Right. Of course
Yeah.
it was. Oh my goodness. So it was kind of, not in this time frame, but not too far away from this time frame when your life definitely took a different pivot and you were sort of forced to pause and you heard the words that you had cancer.
Mhm.
And so I would love to hear about sort of like the moment that you discovered that this may
Mhm.
be something that you were facing and sort of just where you were in that moment, how you discovered it for the first time. Like if you can just talk to us a little bit about that experience. And I also know, Amanda, from some of our previous conversations too, and reading through the book, that there were all these signs There were all these, there were flags there. There were things that potentially the universe was maybe telling you to slow down a little bit. And so often as women, out of sight, out of mind, unless I've got something sticking out of here or I'm uncomfortable and it's causing me it's causing me to slow down. You know what I mean? Like oftentimes you just don't take the time to do that. And that kind of knocked you on your butt a little bit. So talk to
Yeah,
us a bit about your experience there.
absolutely. So to paint the picture, I was newlywed and my husband and I were a lot older, but we had just had a baby. So I was almost 40 when I had my daughter. And I was truly trying to be everything to everybody. I was trying to do it with complete perfection. So I was this executive at this fast growing wine company. We'd experienced triple digit growth year over year for the last 3 years. I had an 18-month-old at the time who did not like to sleep. Was not on a schedule, even though I was reading every book I possibly could read on how to get that to happen. My
Yeah.
husband would look at me and, he didn't read a thing and he would just say, well, this just feels right. And I'm like, what do you mean it feels right? You're not a parent. I mean, you're a parent, but you weren't a parent before. And he said, well,
Yeah.
just, and I was so envious that he could do that. Whereas I, every night for 2, 3 hours at a time, would be reading every parenting book just to get it right. And then because I'm a glutton and I couldn't completely let go of my consulting career, I was consulting on the side for a giant startup in the real estate development world. And I was doing that on nights and weekends. So, as you can imagine, I was coming in probably fifth or sixth place at the time. Everything else was coming in first, second, third, fourth, and self care, which includes everything from healthy eating, exercise, taking a bubble bath, whatever you want to call it, was a non existent in my life.
Mm.
And the way that I found out was, that was such a cute giggle moment when you said play with your boobs. Yes, play with your boobs and know yourself, right? So you can feel any difference. But
Right.
I did not have a lump. I just went in for my routine exam to where my OBGYN said, you're 41. It's time to go get your mammogram. And I said, oh, okay. Because 10 years prior, I had actually felt a lump and I did go get a mammogram. I had benign cystic tissue. So I just kind of figured, oh yeah, that's right. We gotta go get squished. Let's go do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And so I did a
Lovely
couple weeks.
time. Lovely
Oh,
time.
it's
Yeah.
but it's so funny. People talk about like, oh, it is not that bad. It
Right.
lasts for 10 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
guarantee you've been more uncomfortable in your life.
100%. And like, and I, I'm a runner. And like anytime I do hills or I feel like I'm going to die, I'm like 30 seconds. Just give me 30 seconds. You can do anything for 30 seconds. That's like my
Any
thing. And I'm like, you can do anything for 10 seconds. You can do anything, and you're right. It's not that bad. It's a little uncomfortable, but trust me, and you can share this with us. Having breast cancer is way more uncomfortable and way more
Yeah.
disruptive, right? Than getting a little squish squish here and there, and the more you play with them, maybe the less invasive it feels. So, okay.
That's
So,
true.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
absolutely true. So I went in, got my mammogram, didn't think anything of it. Check, check. And a few days later, I received a phone call that said, hey, we need you to come back and just get more imaging. Probably just dense breast tissue, nothing to worry about. And I really didn't worry about it because I had had that benign cystic tissue in the past.
Mhm.
But I went on my patient portal and I got my report from the radiologist who read the mammogram, and there were some pretty long terms. And I did the thing you're absolutely not supposed to do. I consulted Dr. Google and copied and
Mhm.
pasted those terms. And several medical journals came up that said anytime you have this long term, it almost always means malignancy, which of course put me into a tailspin. And I mean, a crazy, crazy tailspin of, what do I do? And I am fortunate in that I come from a family of medical professionals. And so I sent it to them and they all came back saying, we need to get this checked immediately. So I was thankfully to get into a center to get a biopsy within a few days. And I asked the radiologist there, I said, what do you think? And she said, I think you have cancer. And it's interesting because the worst part, in my opinion, of breast cancer or any cancer is the unknown. So
Mhm.
to me, not knowing for through that, probably 1 to 2 week time was by far the worst possible thing. Once I was told you have breast cancer, it was like, this is my reality. Now, what are we going to do? But that's not the entirety of it, right? I had just had a baby and I would look at her and she was just barely walking. And I would say, I am the most selfish human being on the planet that I would bring a child into this world and leave her motherless.
Mhm.
And so that was what was going through my head.
Yeah.
And it was a very dark time. And I kept saying to myself, I need to be hopeful. I need to get a positive attitude. And my brother, who's a physician, and he is the medical director of the PICU. So he deals with the scariest and most awful scenarios and you could ever imagine. And he said to me, sister, give yourself grace. You have just been handed the shittiest hand of cards. Like, let yourself feel and work through these emotions, because hearing that you have cancer and then automatically being happy go lucky is not a normal human reaction. So it's okay to feel grief and to move through those stages so that then you can start to prepare
Yeah.
yourself with the armor to fight.
Let me ask you a question. Do you feel like that someone knowing you as closely as your brother did and almost giving you that permission, did that allow you to finally connect with the true feelings that maybe were there that you were trying to cover for, lack of a better word? Or I mean, did you find that kind of like let your walls down a little bit?
100%.
Yeah.
Because a few select people at that time knew, and I kept getting, oh, you're so strong. You can do this, which are wonderful things to hear. But sometimes it's just nice for somebody to recognize the facts
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that this is tough,
Yeah.
and to give you, as you said so perfectly, to give you permission to feel and to not be perfect and
Yeah.
to move through those emotions. I absolutely agree with that statement.
Yeah. Well, and I think that there's an element of, just recognizing that it's okay, but then also recognizing that this is, the reality is, to your point, this is a fact. Like your body can only do what it can do, right? And you've got to be able to mentally prepare yourself for whatever that may come, which
Yeah.
is a very difficult thing to do. And I want to almost turn something that you said into a little bit of a something else. When you were talking about not wanting to be selfish and leaving your daughter motherless and all of that, I think that, and not that this is where you sat by any means, but we've got to prioritize, right? Like the business and the next win, is not the priority. It's how am I taking care and pausing enough to recognize that I'm actually able to do that thing and celebrate that thing and like be there
Hmm.
for that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Hmm.
and
Absolutely.
yeah, and so it's a challenging. I mean, it's definitely a challenging place, but I get it. And I'm curious to know what your disc personality is. But being a strong woman and in the roles that you've been, I would imagine that it's like, okay, we've got this. We need to move forward. We've got to come up with a plan, and it's just like let's get into action. But you were diagnosed, and you had triple positive was your
Hmm.
diagnosis, and so this was a very serious diagnosis. This was not a, oh, this is a very light, we just remove it and then we're good, a couple of weeks of chemo. Like you had several surgeries, went through several treatments of
Hmm.
chemo, and had a very, very significant journey with that. So give us a
Hmm.
little bit of, once you go back in and you get your results, like talk to us a little bit about, you're sitting in the doctor's office and what is that news? And then what do the next couple of months of your life end up looking like?
Yeah. So at the time, we had to decide where we wanted to do treatment. My husband traveled Monday through Friday for his job across multiple states. And we knew, I mean, you're going to be sick, right? And so we were trying to decide, do we stay in Colorado? Do we go to where my parents are so that they could help with our daughter? We at the time had, during the daycare, because I was working and he was working, well, who's going to take care of her at night? That was my rat race. My rat race was get done with work, have the baby till she goes to bed, collapse into bed, get up at 5 a.m. Because, like I said, she didn't like to sleep. So we ultimately decided to go to where my parents were, which was in Southern California. And I chose based on, by the way, I didn't know. I had to Google and talk to a ton of people to figure out, like, how do you decide which provider to go to, which hospital? So I, of course, was looking at trying to find the best ones that I possibly could. And ended up being, through a friend of a friend, connected to the leading breast cancer surgeon at USC Keck. And that's how I made my decision to where to get care, which was not the most convenient decision because it was 2 hours from where I lived. But ultimately, I decided that, I knew eventually I would need the surgery, and I wanted a surgeon that does this every day, all day. I don't want the general surgeon, not to say that there's anything wrong with this, because sometimes that's the only option you have, but I didn't necessarily want the one that does gallbladders and appendectomies as well.
Right. Right.
I wanted the one because it's our breasts.
Yeah.
I was hoping they would come back in some fashion. And I want to make sure I got all of the bad stuff out. So that's how I made my treatment decision. And my course of action with my particular cancer was to do 6 rounds of the really nasty chemotherapy called TCHP, Taxol carboplatin, Herceptin, and Perjeta. And then after that, that takes about almost 6 months to do. Then I had the double mastectomy, which was originally a decision because studies now show that a lumpectomy combined with radiation is just as effective as the full mastectomy. But in a later MRI, we found a second tumor. And once we
Oh,
found that second tumor, it was like the decision was off the table. The booby's got to go.
yeah. Yeah.
So
Oh,
yeah. So it actually was a blessing in disguise for me because I was in analysis paralysis. And so I actually appreciated that the universe gave me clear direction.
yeah.
And I think for sure it was the right one for me to get the mastectomy. And I was like, if we're going to do that, we're not going to do this twice. So they're both going. And
Right.
that's how I made it the decision. And at the time, I didn't know what I obviously knew in hindsight, which is if you could ever avoid having another round of chemotherapy, you'll do it because it is the worst possible thing to go through. If you can avoid it, do it. So
Yeah.
very smart decision on your part to be
Yeah.
proactive. And
Yeah.
then I had my double mastectomy and they found residual disease, which meant that I had to do a whole nother year of chemotherapy, targeted
Oh,
chemotherapy. So yeah, it was a 2.5 year journey, then another couple surgeries after that because it was hormone positive, which meant that once my ovaries decided that they wanted to wake back up, I thought I was going to be in menopause forever because chemo shuts those things down. But we found out that they were getting active again. So I ended up getting my ovaries and fallopian tubes taken out as well because,
oh
yeah,
gosh.
yeah.
Wow. Wow.
So
And all of this, and how old are you today?
it's a good question. 40, about to be 44.
About to be 44. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Well, oh wait, today.
yeah, well, that's
Today.
right.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
that's
44.
right. Gosh, so
I know.
young, to go through all of that. And I mean, that's just, wow. That's just crazy. That is just crazy. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, you talked about chemo and chemo being something that was so just, if you can avoid it, right? I'm curious, what were some of the non-medical things that really mattered most to you as you were going through this time, whether that be your girlfriends or that be a good book or a massage or, what were some of those things that really sort of helped you out that you found really brought joy to you during some of these dark times for you?
It's a great question because, as I said, I was experiencing, this deep, dark place. I had just had a girlfriend of mine from college who just passed from breast cancer, and so in my mind, that's why it meant death, right? Even though the statistics say that there was a 99% cure rate, I had n equals one. Breast cancer means death. And so a couple things that I did that were extremely helpful. I thankfully was working with a therapist at the time, well, was really a business coach, but she was also a therapist. And she suggested reading a book called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. And
Mhm.
it is, I listened to it on a business trip. I think I was probably 2 weeks post diagnosis, and I put the earbuds on the plane. And by the time my plane touched down, I was like, this is the best thing that could ever happen to me. There's something great is going to happen from this cancer journey. I don't know what it is, but that book does not talk about disease. It just talks about, tough things that come, obstacles that come into our life, and how that can be the perfect pivot into what you were always destined to be, or
Yeah.
destined to become, or destined to do. And so I completely reversed my mindset in that, how could this be the absolute best thing that could ever happen to me? That was number one. The second recommendation that was given to me was to get into meditation and
Mhm.
to explore the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza. So
Yep.
I'm very much, again, a Western medicine family where, you want to take care of things. But what's so cool about his work is that he taps into studies. He does blood analysis, brain scans. He has, he basically combines sort of that Eastern medicine with the Western medicine modalities, and has proven scientifically that meditation can be a beneficial part of our healing. And I can tell you, for me, it was a transformation on a mental level, because we can't always control what happens to us physically, right? Even though he does have some really cool radical remission stories of people curing themselves from the uncurable. That's not always, unfortunately, the truth for some people. But what we can control is our mindset. We can
Yeah.
control the thoughts that flow through our brain, and we can choose joy. We can
Mhm.
choose happiness. We can choose hope, and really just lean into that. I would say I
Mhm.
was the happiest version of myself going through chemotherapy, and just meditating for, an hour to 2 hours a day. It was cool. I'd come bouncing, some days, the days I could get out of bed, I'd come bouncing into the kitchen. My family was like, what is wrong with you? And I'd be like, life is great. And
Yeah.
so that was a huge benefit. And it doesn't have to, it could be any form of meditation. I think it just
Yeah.
brings your mind to a new level, and that helps with the pain.
Yep.
And your
Yeah.
your last piece that you mentioned was about friendship, which I can dive into if you want, unless you want to
Yeah,
ask a
absolutely.
tag along.
Well,
Okay.
I was going to say I want to just tag on to something that you mentioned with the teachings that you kind of had from Ryan Holiday with the book, and then Dr. Joe Dispenza with kind of that Stoic practice and visualization around meditation. It's amazing to me. I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit of a hippie at heart, but I feel like, when you have an open mind and an open heart, things just sort of come to you because you're allowing yourself to just be open to receiving them. I'm starting to get into manifestation lately, and I'm like, let's just put it out there and just sort of see what happens. But over the last 2 weeks, I've had the conversation with you, and in reading through your book and understanding the importance around mindset shift and how critical that is to you're feeling a little bit more in control and feeling a little bit more in
Mhm.
control of the outcome, and how that day to day doesn't own you, but it's all about how you look at it, right? But I've
Yes.
heard you talk about that. I've heard Andrew Huberman on the Huberman podcast talk about that, on how to shift your mindset. And they had this physician on who talked about how mindset impacts every single aspect of your life, whether it be diet, health, political views. I mean, like relationships, like you name it, mindset sits, it's the anchor, in everything.
Yes.
And it can fuel you in a positive direction. It can hold you back. It can keep you still. There's so many different things that just that simple mindset can do. I heard about it on Mel Robbins as well. I think it was just last week I was listening, and it was all about how to just shift your mindset and design the life that you want, right? So I love that you have been able to sort of find these resources that completely transform the experience that you went through. And not everybody has that opportunity. You know what I mean? So I love that. And we will definitely link Ryan's book, The Obstacle is the Way, here as well. Yeah. And we'll also, so tell us, Dr. Joe Dispenza, did you say that he was a therapist that you worked with during that time? Is that right? Or
I wish. No, he runs these global retreats, but he's like the godfather of meditation and manifestation. And then bringing in renowned scientists who absolutely do not believe in the power of meditation. And then they see it, experience it by doing blood tests, by doing brain mapping. And they have scientifically proven that it is helpful in healing. So he has, I think it's just drjoedispenza.com is his website. So I took his online course and then read his book. And if nothing else, it's going to make you feel like, as you mentioned so perfectly, like you have control, like you have power over what's happening to you. Because when you are diagnosed, you ask, why me? Right? Mm-hmm. I'm helpless. I'm hopeless. All of those things start percolating and circulating in your head. So when you can take back just a sliver of power and control, it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah. It's amazing how that impacts the outcome. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like, oh, I completely agree. So one of the things that you mentioned was, when you were kind of in this moment and going through these new learnings and kind of discovering a new side of yourself, you knew that there was something big that was going to be on the other side of this. And I'm very excited to say that I think one of those big things was your book, which comes out today, and it's Finding Hope and Joy in Cancer, which is so exciting that you wrote this book. And I love hearing a little bit of the backstory, of how you kind of came to be, where it just sort of came to you and you just started writing things down, and it just kind of poured out of you a little bit. So talk to us a little bit about the book. And this is a new thing for you, and I mean, this is extremely exciting. So what was sort of, I'm assuming it was part of the journey, the healing journey that you went through, but what was the catalyst moment for you to want to write this book? Who is it designed for? And then I definitely want to talk about some of the pluses around it too, with the book drive and things like that. So.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I definitely did not have an intention of writing a book. I had a lot of therapists tell me that I should be writing. I have since become sort of the go-to friend when anyone is diagnosed, man, woman, doesn't matter the cancer. If they're diagnosed, they typically reach out to me and say, can you talk to my friend? And the answer is always absolutely. If I can bring any relief to anyone, I will do it. And I'm honored to be that person. And I just really didn't think that I was a writer. But one day, and I didn't really think this happened. I've heard these stories and you're like, yeah, that's never going to happen to me. But at 3 a.m., I woke up with a start and the words were just etched in my brain. And I was like, I need to get that out so I can go back to sleep. So I did. I typed it out on my phone and went back to sleep and slept soundly. And a couple days later, I had another kind of revelatory moment, and I sat down and I wrote, and it just kind of happened like that, where every couple days I would feel inspired. I always wrote when I was alone, and I always wrote when I was sitting outside and kind of in nature. And what it became is this cathartic experience of, let me get my story out, because now she's 4, but I have a daughter and I don't want to forget the details, because just as an aging woman and going through menopause, we forget things, but add on the chemo brain, you really forget things. So I started just writing it, and I wanted it to be fun and interesting, for her to read someday. And by the time I was done, I thought, you know what? I think this could really help somebody. I think this could help some people. And I at that time revealed to my family that I had written it because nobody knew. And I gave it to a few friends who had, have gone through also the cancer journey. And I said, what do you think? And they were like, this is going to help people a
Yeah.
lot. And so
Wow.
what the book is, it's my story, but it's part memoir, but it's also part guidebook. It goes through, and talks practical tools as you're going through the journey of cancer. Doesn't really matter what kind of cancer you have. Obviously, I do talk about my breast cancer journey, but really chemo is kind of chemo. The side effects don't pick and choose. They typically hit us all. So it talks, to how to alleviate some of those things. And then for the people who are caring for you, whether that's spouse, caregivers, friends, family, how to show up in a really meaningful way and fully understand. I know, 4 years ago, prior to my journey, I had, again, analysis paralysis where you don't want to say or do the wrong thing. So you sometimes say nothing at all. And for somebody who's going through that journey, there's nothing worse than to feel forgotten. So the book really talks about meaningful ways in which you can show up and let that person, whether it's someone who's close to you, who's going through it, or someone from a distance, an old friend, and what you can really do to make them feel special. And it doesn't take much. It really
Yeah.
doesn't. It takes about 10 seconds of your time to
Yeah.
really feel seen and loved.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. And I love how you've kind of prefaced the book and how it takes you alongside that journey a little bit, where you kind of talk about choosing your medical team and what you went through for that and, practicing the self-care during it and what sort of things worked for you and and then the practical side of it, of the toolkit and understanding your love of meditation and how that changed you. I mean, I feel like this book would be great, not only for someone who might find out that they are in that situation themselves, but also to a loved one who recently found out someone they know also went through it too. It's real easy to think that when someone's going through something like that, that you just need to be there and support. But sometimes it's very different from that. Sometimes it's not as obvious as you think it may be. And we can't make assumptions during this time about what we think our loved ones need, right? We have to ask those questions and really be intuitive around that. And the reality
Yep.
is you're not necessarily thinking very clearly, right? So you need others around you to be present and to be active and present and supportive. And sometimes folks just don't really know what to do. You know what I mean? They really don't.
They don't.
So I love that you provided those kind of practical tools to not only help someone who's going through it, you know what I mean, but then also those that are supporting. And I love as well that you have a book drive. So not only does your
Yeah.
book come out today on October 1st, but you are also paying it forward. So talk to us a little bit
Mhm.
about that.
I'm so excited about it because, I have a lot of people in my life who, may or may not, the book may not resonate with, but they want the support, what it's doing for cancer patients. And so we decided to do a book drive where for every $10 that's donated, a book is donated to a cancer center and given directly to a patient. Because when you are first diagnosed, they give you this lovely large binder that is full of all the medical jargon, all of the kind of the horrible things that are about to happen. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice to have something that is filled with laughter and
Yes,
joy
you're right.
and tools and all of the things?
And like the
But
reality, right? Like let's
and
get it out of the
yeah,
medical terminology and put it into like a language that we can understand, right?
absolutely, because that's what I did. Because I'm a crazy researcher, I went on Amazon, I looked at the top 5 books and I ordered every single one of them. I got through usually about the first chapter because they were so thick. I'm like, I need answers now. I
Yeah.
need to know what to do now. And I don't have 10 hours to read each of these books. I need to know. And my book is here, actually, it's like, it's an easy read.
Yes.
It's a
Yeah.
3-hour read. I also recorded an audiobook if that's the way you like to listen. And there's an ebook. So there's all the formats depending on what works for people in their journey. And it's like I said, it's what I wished I would have had,
Yeah.
given to me as a resource. So I'm very excited to give it to people. And I didn't want it to be unobtainable for anyone going through this journey. Not that a book is ever that expensive, but
Yeah.
you'd be surprised at the costs and how they mount up as you're going through treatment, all the things that you want to do and have at your disposal to make
Yeah.
treatment just a little bit easier. They estimate it's around $9,000 to $10,000 added to your annual expenses once you're diagnosed. So
Well,
it's expensive.
it's very
Yeah.
expensive. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll never forget when when I was preparing for my surgery, I just wanted to talk to
Hmm.
women who had been through it and who could just tell me the reality. Like, I don't want
Right.
to, of course, my doctor's going to be like, you're going to do great. You're going to do great. It's fine. It's no big deal.
Hmm.
Not the case at all. And I was so glad that I spoke with women who were like, okay, let's just break it down. This is going to suck. This is going to be horrible. Make sure you get one of these to help with this. And like that kind of stuff you don't find in that big binder, right? That you necessarily
No.
get on day one. So I love the
Yeah.
fact. And I love that it's like you kind of say, it's a cup of tea or a glass of wine, and it just makes this kind of
Yeah.
humorous, approachable thing. And it's very scary. I'm not trying to take, diminish the importance or significance behind this, but the reality is that, you can get through this and hope, knock on wood. I mean, a lot of situations don't end in a successful outcome, but those that do, there are ways to get through it, I think, that are just a little bit more enjoyable than it being, a
Yes.
sterile journey where you maybe you can't find the positives and the goods in an otherwise devastating situation. And I just love that you've been able to capture that in this book and share your story with the world. And because it is October 1st and it is the start of this month, Flourish is going to donate $100 to your book drive. That way we can fund 10 books to 10 women and really keep that going. It's a little bit that we could do, but I really hope that our audience really follows suit and pays it forward as well. Because this is something that I know, going through that experience would have been phenomenal for me. And mine was very, very different than most. And I'm thankful for that, but not everybody is in that situation. And if they can have a little bit of light and laughter brought to that experience while they're going through it, I know that can be something that's, is just going to make it a little bit better. So
Oh,
congratulations.
thank you, Megan. I so appreciate that. I mean, the thing is that it's for the price of a latte. Essentially, you can absolutely, I think, change the course of somebody's life. I really do. And you've just changed the course of 10 people's lives. So thank you.
Well,
Oh,
thank you. Thank
you're
you.
gonna make me cry.
Oh, well, this is really exciting. And I'm honored that our paths have gotten a chance to cross, honestly. And kudos to you. I'm in awe and in admiration of you capturing this journey and really putting that time and effort into it and being able to share that with other people. I know you and I talked about this, but it's in these really hard moments where we can find our true selves and where we can really recognize what we are truly capable of achieving. And just
Yes.
when you think you have hit rock bottom, you surprise yourself, and sometimes all you need a little bit of motivation and a little bit of peer support to realize that you're not the only one going through something, to make it seem a little bit more achievable and do so in a positive way. So I'm honored that we've had a chance to showcase you on SheBoss, and just very excited for you with the book, and can't wait to cheer you on from the sidelines. And we just appreciate you. So thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate you for sharing such incredible stories, and it's something that's needed in our world today. And I am grateful for the work that you do in the community and now nationwide.
That's right, nationwide. So we will make
Yeah.
sure we'll have your book. We've got the link with this video as well. So we'll promote this out. So make sure you go get your book. It's available today. And if you don't need a book, then support the book drive and support other women. You can go to the website, hopeandjoy.net or findinghopeandjoy.net. We'll include hopeandjoy.net. We'll include all the links. So, but thank you again, Amanda. We really do appreciate you. And yeah, we're just excited for you. So congratulations.
Thank you, Megan. I appreciate you.
Okay, you take care. Have a good one.
Okay, you too. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.